Cape. Now, as we continue to celebrate Heritage Day, let us now focus on one of the most important conversations that some South Africans have been engaging in for the past few days on social media, which is the issue around homosexuality versus your culture and heritage. Now, the hashtag #InkonzweStabane trended on social media for many days, and in some instances, it sort of opened up wounds, while in some, it's also brought some healing. The LGBTI plus communities is wherein many were sharing their own stories, the challenges they had to face resulting from all forms of stereotypes and cultural limitations around homosexuality. The question remains, though, as to what role does culture play in making the lives of the LGBTI plus communities even more harder? We speak to Steve Litsike, who is the founder of an organization dealing with cases around homosexuality, Access Chapter 2, together with Mutaung Rampai via Skype, but we'll come to Mutaung in a short while. Let's just have a chat with Steve. Good afternoon to you and happy Heritage Day.
Good afternoon, thank you, and happy Heritage to you and the viewers.
Is it really a happy one for the LGBTI communities?
Look, I think one thing that we must acknowledge is that there's a heritage that is being stolen from, people from LGBTI community, because they end up not actually learning and understanding the history of their own identities, but also for others who still celebrate, others who still, their families still are part of their lives, and I think we need to recognize both elements for those who are still part of families, but for those who are no longer part of families, and that heritage is stolen from them.
True, and the question we're asking this afternoon, Steve, is what role does culture play in making the lives of the LGBTI plus communities even harder?
Yeah, and I think first maybe we need to define even culture, which evolves over time. And I think it's a way of thinking, it's a way of communicating our own lives, our own history, and our own practices, and particularly as Africans. And I think, what role culture says is how it's interpreted in our daily lives in the current context. And I think what we see is that a lot of people disassociate themselves from sexuality, as if like sexuality is not part of anyone's being. And I think that on its own is problematic. Culture, sexuality is part of anyone's culture, and I think it needs to be respected in that way. But what we've seen is that the cultural practices that is assumed as non-African is the one that impacts the life of LGBTI person. And what we see on a daily lives is people are rejected, people are denied family and unions in their own lives everywhere.
But why is it still the case? Are we not a society who wants to evolve with times, maybe?
It is because of the colonial loss, the colonial history, the legacy that we still is still maintained by many of our African countries, but by many of our African people. And I think we lose the context of humanity, the context of our own heritage, of what it means to respect people's lives, people's sexuality. And I think where we are at a time where there's a loss of humanity in our daily lives, or morality for that matter. What we also see is that daily lives of people are impacted with our own experiences in the political, social, and economic life. So when we then say is that, do we want to change? We have to change by first recognizing respect of humanity, respect of diversity in our own daily lives.
All right, and it's really sad, Steve, to see what these communities are subjected to on a daily basis. I could not believe what I read over the weekend. I know the hashtag #InkonzweStabane had been trending for a few days, and then on Saturday morning I really got the time to sit down and read their stories, people sharing their stories, their experiences, the hard times that they had to endure, and I was in tears, really reading what human beings are subjected to for their choice of sexuality.
No, I mean, look, I think these are the daily lives and realities of LGBTI persons, and here we are, social media managed to also open up and saying, and afford those who do not have spaces to engage and spaces to come out. And Inkonzo is Dabani became that space where people can share, that can be reached out to. And I think many LGBT organizations across the country and across the world have created a safe space for LGBTI persons, because in their own homes, in their own communities, have been rejected, have been murdered, have been raped. And I think this is where we need to then say, are we doing enough?
I think that's the question.
That's the rights of LGBT
and
persons.
One of the stories that really caught my attention was that of a 25-year-old Motaung Rampai from Lesotho, who put a thread on Twitter about the devastating life that he had to go through from the age of 13. And fortunately, he joins us now live on Skype. Motaung, thank you so much for coming through. Good afternoon to you and happy Heritage Day.
Thank you very much, Aspali.
Now, you're one of the many South Africans, or should I say Africans, who weighed in on the hashtag Ingonzestabane, which trended on Twitter and Facebook for the past few days. It must have been very hard for you to come out and share your story.
It was very hard because I actually wrote that thread about it. It was in January. So when the hashtag came back, it just brought me back to the time when I wrote that thread on Twitter.
All right, so the response now was out of this world, but let's talk about the response when you first put that thread on Twitter in January this year.
The response was very shocking because a lot of people DM'd me their own stories about the things that happened to them that were similar to mine. So it was an eye-opener seeing that I'm not the only one who has gone through such things in my life.
Mm-hmm. And I think yours is even more devastating, Motaung, because you had issues of being from background ya Lesotho, where culture plays, the main role in one's life. And you were also molested at the age of 13 by your cousin.
Yeah, it happened that when I was in high school, we were going at the same high school, and then I guess he would see me all the time at school, and I was very feminine, and then he decided that, okay, this one looks gay, and he knew that I would be scared to come out to my parents. So what he did was to blackmail me by molesting. He was blackmailing me, telling me that if I tell anyone that he's been sexually abusing me, he will tell everyone that I'm gay. So it was very hard because it happened for like 5 years, my entire high school years.
So it happened for 5 years. Let's talk about, as much as it was physical abuse on you, but it must have also impacted on you emotionally. What was the 5 years like?
Honestly, I cannot go back there and say I know how it was, because it was like I was dreaming, because I can't remember any good memories from that time, even if I did have them, because I was very enclosed. I didn't want to be around people, and I just felt like everybody else was going to do the same thing he was doing to me. So it was just hell. It was complete hell.
But then on one of your threads or one of your tweets, you say that you ended up, sort of accepting the situation, as it were. You would, in some instances even go to him and ask for it.
Yeah, because I felt like he was keeping his secret for me. So when he wasn't coming to me about the whole thing, the situation that we had, I felt like, okay, maybe he's expecting me to come to him because, well, I owe him something because he's keeping this secret that I have.
And how did it all happen in terms of, coming out and letting your parents know about this entire situation?
Well, what happened is that I didn't even come out myself. He's the one who outed me. I wasn't in the country. I visited some family in SA. So I think he got mad. So he told my father that I'm gay, and my father called, and I had to tell him the truth. I told him, yeah, it's true, I'm gay. And then the news then went to my mother, because my parents have been separated for some time now. So they ended up getting to my mother, and she also asked me, but she's the one who accepted me immediately. My father, I don't think he has accepted me till this day. So what happened was that 2 days later, there were rumors going around that his family was making jokes about me being gay. So it got to me like, so he outed me, and he also has been doing things to me. So our deal was off, and I had to speak up about what he was doing to me. And I told my mother everything, and his sister-in-law.
So you ended up telling on him as well, telling your mother what your cousin had been doing on you for all these years. Did this, in a way, sort of create conflicts? What's about in Dwazati family, they will always be there when such things happen?
Yeah, there was a lot of conflict that happened. His family hates me so much that after he himself came out, they said I'm the one who turned him gay. To this day, I don't talk to his family, and I don't attend any family gatherings where I know they will be there, because I know it's going to be a very awkward situation.
Where is the cousin now, Mutaung?
Unfortunately, last year he committed suicide because one of the family members was abusing him because he was gay, so they didn't accept him. So the abuse went on and on. He abused me and they abused him, so he ended up just committing suicide.
Sure. Well, but just in conclusion, what do you think needs to be done? You and I were having this conversation, throughout the weekend that, more education needs to be put out there. Most importantly, in your deepest rural area. I know you are in Liribe, which is literally a walking distance from where I come from in Fixbeck in the Eastern Free State. And I don't know the stereotypes, around the issue of homosexuality. Where do we start? What needs to be done? Let's not just look at government, but what can we do as the society?
Honestly, I don't know where we could begin, but I guess I've been doing a lot of interacting with people who want to know about homosexuality, because I realize that everything happens because people are not sure what homosexuality is. So in their confusion, they attack us because, people seem to attack what they don't know. Their fears they just swallow them up and they become very, very vicious. So I feel like there should be platforms where people can ask questions, or there should be education, and it should also be in schools. What we know has always been about heterosexual, especially the reproductive systems and all that. So I feel like there needs to be
more education.
A way that education about homosexuality should also be included.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be forced on anyone, but it should be included in some of these books that children read, and all the textbooks that they are given at school. So there's a lot that needs to be done, but yeah.
Okay, time constraints. We have to leave it at this, but thank you so much for, being brave enough to come out and talk to us here on SA Today. We really appreciate it. We'll make some time and bring you into the studio so that we can have more of these conversations. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
All right, just your parting words. This is a sad story, but this is what many Africans are subjected to on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think, these are experiences, and a whole lot of people that shared on Twitter, over the last few days.
Even celebrities.
Even celebrities were coming out to saying, look, I've been subjected to horror, and I've been silenced, I've been abused, I've been raped, I've been, all these experiences. And what is very interesting is that all these cases are underreported. The Love Not Hate group, which is 6 members of this campaign, did research in the last 2 years. 88% of LGBTI persons do not report these incidents. So for me, I think it's very imperative that we find ourselves, government, civil society, private sector, playing a role, not only just in that space, but also in communities.
Steve, we'll make another day. Thank you so much for coming through. All right, many thanks to my guests there. Let's now move along. The Democratic